is Carol Mae Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who are the awakening? They are seeking a greater possibility in their reality and looking for solutions. They know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If they can transform themselves, they can change the world. Her Conversations will introduce you to people who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. We're now in the last quarter of what for most of us has been the most challenging year in our lives. And if you think about it, many religions, many faith-based and spiritual communities have anticipated a time such as this. They've called it rapture, they've called it ascension, awakening, a rise to new dimensions. So even though we knew that this was happening, this was on the horizon, we never really knew what world events would actually need to occur in order for this to take place. And you couldn't look at religious texts or so forth, and maybe there would be, trumpets in the sky and a rapture and an arising, or the planet would actually literally divide into two separate planets, and one dimension would remain and a second dimension would rise to a different sphere of existence. It's not happening like that, of course, with everything that's turning out in the world as it is now. So much has been revealed. There are so many questions that are happening. There's been this international, this global lockdown in response to the coronavirus, and many thoughts as to what that actually is. But what is clear is the narrative that has been keeping that story is actually unraveling. And even in the face of that, that is just creating more and more division. I mean, right now, there can be no doubt about separation. And, I'm just confident that very few of us could have seen the way that this year's played out coming. The phrase itself, 2020, is mostly associated with clear and perfect vision. And what is apparent is that more of the hidden aspects of our society are being exposed. People are awakening in their millions. This is a beautiful thing. And awakening is an individual experience. And as much as well-meaning friends and family want to share links to videos and articles and bombard their social media with memes, and some of them are humorous and some of them are just full-on explicit with the truth, it's really impossible to know what nugget will dissolve the matrix of lies of someone's paradigm. And you have to be aware that they will defend their truth even in the face of deception and the proof that what they believe doesn't hold water anymore. And this is because the programming that all of us have been subjected to is so insidious and deep. And it has infiltrated practically every single aspect of modern life today. This is manipulation and mind control deeper than any of us could ever imagine. So there is no escape from you, whatever your interests, your beliefs, no matter how righteous or not so. There's been a subversion of the truth, and that is to align with a darker agenda. And of course, just hearing this, it means it sounds like the most preposterous idea. It sounds like a fiction. It sounds like a movie. Good reason for that. But, nobody wants to admit that they were lied to, or they want to believe that their trust has been dangerously misplaced, because it's embarrassing and it's a painful blow to anybody's pride. But as uncomfortable as that is, it's imperative now for us to mature, for us to get over our bruised egos, because I truly believe that we don't have time. It's not easy to stand up because you stand out. And right now, people who dare to raise their voice and ask questions are ridiculed. The media, which is the most dangerous weapon in this period of time, which I believe is a time of war, they broadcast lies, they amplify fear, they justify the vilification of anybody who would dare speak against their narrative. And this is as if we wouldn't be able to reason for ourselves. And they may have a point, because it's got to the point where we are mentally not as strong as we could be, and so caught up in the fear that even the thought of making a decision on an individual level, it just seems like too much. Like on a daily basis, people are asking me, what do I think of that, or what should I do? What should they do? These are adults, grown people, but we have just been soft-soaped out of our own sovereignty. So if it looks so difficult to raise your head and raise your hand and say something's not right here, who in their right mind would willingly walk into that pit of fire? There are few people who have the mental and the emotional fortitude that's required to be a lone voice. So even though there are people who feel that there is something that's not quite right in the world, at the moment they're afraid to draw attention to themselves and put it with that kind of ridicule and attack. But however, as difficult as that experience may be to the newly awakened, they should be comforted that they're not going to be in this position for too much longer. I think we have a matter of months before disclosure really starts to hit the populace on a major level. You've got to think it's the voices who are making the most noise now, that are projecting the most, are the ones that have the most to hide. The vitriol is turned up to 11, and if you know that, you'll know the joke. But also as a result of this, more people are connecting and supporting each other than ever before. Ideally, what we just all want a quiet life, but at the moment, the chances of us being able to roam freely in normal society as we remember it are unlikely to return. We can't go back to normal. Even if everything was over tomorrow, there's been too much deep damage done. The memory of this is too raw for us to walk back into society as if we haven't experienced the past 6 odd months. There are 2 outcomes as I see it at present. So there's one which is the gradual removal of our choices and freedoms, which we see incrementally happening. And at the moment, this is currently being painted as manoeuvres for our safety. But then we'll get to a point where we will not have any autonomy at all. And if we do get to that point, then it will be past the point of any return. I really believe that. But also there's another possibility, and the possibility is the awakening of mankind to the grand deceptions that we have been living under. When that does happen, and I am placing my focus and my energy on this eventuality and this turnout in the face of everything that is saying that that's not a possibility, I believe we can step into a different society, a different way of living, because we will have become aware of how close we came to losing it all. And that society can be one that's based on transparency, that's based on truth, that's based on unity. So 2020 has unapologetically exposed the divisions between us, and we look around us and we realise that we've been living in a matrix of lies. We also are able to see into the root of people's beliefs and what they stand for and how integrous they truly are. This is especially true of people who have been held in high esteem as public figures. And I can even lean on this into the spiritual community. And as I said, 2021 is a year of exposure and disclosure, and those months will expose to us exactly the truth behind the people that we've looked to shape our world and our lives for us, and also it will expose to us who's truly evil, who was compromised, who's succumbed to threats on their lives, and who was never really for us from the start. And to make our way through this, we individually and we collectively do have so much work on ourselves to do. We need to recognise and address our own trauma bonds and heal. Now, I know for many people, the thought of self-development is too woo-woo, it's too self-indulgent, but their ignorance to the importance of this is what is showing now. It's vital work. It needs to be done. Otherwise, that period of time is going to be especially difficult and especially painful. The lack of self-awareness and growth has meant that most adults are operating from unhealed wounds. So they have very little knowledge or very little connection to themselves. And also they are severely lacking in the maturity that they need to separate themselves from their opinions, which are then so still deeply enmeshed in their ego. So this manifests itself as a need to be right, a need to be liked all the time. And it also takes away their ability to hold on to multiple ideas. One of the things that we need to step away from, at least for the next few months, is to assume that anybody can come to us with absolute facts. It's all opinion, and there will be people that do have more truth to share with us, and there are those that are just coming out with complete lies. There are those that are slightly misguided and have levels of truth and good intentions, and those that are out there as disinformation. As I keep repeating this, and it may sound alarming, but what is happening right now on the planet is war, and we have to reclaim our focus and our mentality and our sovereignty and our minds in order to be able to rise up above this, because we can, but at the moment it doesn't seem that way. We need to be able to respond instead of immediately reacting to any situation. We need to think now of the greater good of mankind and not just be so concerned with our immediate self-interests. We have to look at what's happening right now and ask how that's affecting those that we don't see, or those that don't have a voice for themselves, the elderly, the people that are really struggling psychologically, and also what the mandates that we're taking on board without question, how they are affecting the children right now. If for no other reason can we not look at the children and see, because for those that are not able to work with their own emotional issues and do the self-work, they're not able then to maybe recognise the damage that is being imprinted on the children, and then be able to address those as and when we overcome this period of time and our children need us more than ever. And, we see how people can camouflage their anxiety, and a lot of the time it's by using intellectual bravado, which is not so it's not so brave. There's facts and figures, and it's very easy to want to smack people down, but this is not the time for that. This is a time for us to really take stock of what's happening in the world. If someone disagrees with people like that, they tend to think that that they're getting a personal attack. They're not self-regulating free thinkers. They're fear-led, they're trauma-bounded, they're codependent on a system that knows precisely how to manipulate and divide, and it's working. And so many of us have lost any sense of who we are as human beings. We have no connection to anything except the collective consciousness, which is a despicable manufactured entity, and it's powered by the lowest aspects of community that are hell-bent, and their pun is intended, on suppressing us and keeping us in our lowest vibration. It's a blind groupthink that's desperate to maintain the status quo, even in the face of its irrelevance and demise, because their God-given ability to imagine a better reality is not able to function because they're in a perpetual fight-flight mode. And the ones who are playing us know this. There's less of them than us. But the way that we control and denigrate ourselves is by being in fear and not being in our sovereignty. And at the moment, critical thinking is frowned upon, and people still lean on the hand that is feeding them the lies and the toxicity. It teaches fear, it perpetuates the fear on a daily basis. The lies are off the charts, and it is very much about dividing us from the few awakened amongst us who are fighting to save our brothers and sisters. So I'm continually asking myself, why are people so unprepared to listen? And why do they find so much joy in attacking, in using insults and projection? There's many reasons for that, but what they are unaware of is that they are reflecting and using the traits of the narcissistic society that they've depended on so wholeheartedly. I continually ask myself why people are so unprepared to listen, and that why do they find joy in attacking, using insults and projection? And partly I think they're unaware that they are reflecting and using the exact same traits of the narcissistic society that they have depended on. Like I mentioned before, I'm really surprised at how ill-equipped the spiritual community is right now, and how few people recognise this is the very thing that we'd been preparing for, or so I thought. This is the age of Aquarius, this is the dawning of a new age, it's the Great Awakening. Personally, my realizations started months before this period of time that we're going through right now. And it was because I was working through my own difficulties and I was feeling every aspect of it. And the practice and that I was using at the time, for me, there was no protocol to address what I was experiencing, except for bypassing the problem with practices that would actually remove you completely out of your body, whereby giving you the impression that the issue had been overcome, which it hadn't. You were just avoiding it. And any shadow aspects were deemed too negative, and I was just disappointed that I'd invested so much of my time into something that ultimately could not help me, or I believe help anybody, but each to his own time. But I'm not going to beat myself up about that, because I can see that experience was not wasted. When you're feeling abandoned, it leaves you with one choice only, and that's to turn to yourself and create your own practices, and best of all, connect with your own sovereignty. And this is now what I'd call my own initiation to the truth, that there's no one who knows how to navigate my own life better than me. And once you've pulled yourself out of your darkness, it's impossible now for anything to ever take you off course again for too long. And that has made me stronger than I ever knew that I could be, which is why I'm unafraid of speaking out right now. I've got to the point where I can't just say or do nothing. For me, what is the point of being a bystander? This is a pivotal point in the history of humanity, and it sounds like a grandiose statement, but I don't believe it is. Now, whether you're aware of this or not, and as I've said countless times and will say again, we are in war. We are in a spiritual and a psychological war. The weapon that is being used against the masses is information, disinformation, because they know that what we consume as information creates our beliefs and forms our reality. And if we continue to blindly trust the few channels that feed us the lies, then we will lose. And we're getting, we're hitting the bottom, but we can turn it around at any point in time. This time right now is time to ask questions. You look to yourself. Do you believe that you're capable of thinking for yourself? Do you think you'd be able to recognize the truth if it was presented to you? Ask your questions. Why are people being censored? Why are increasing numbers of people rising up and protesting around the world. And just a side note to that is, like, I in the past month have been to 3 protests, which with increasingly in numbers, up to I think the last one that I went to was maybe around about the 45,000 mark in London. So there was you have to, are all these people crazy? Why are more and more people and doing this in different places across the world? And it's probably happening to a greater degree than you would be aware of, because these things will not be presented to you through the main channels, but it's happening. So, what have we got to lose if we do stand up for ourselves? And the answer is, if we don't stand up for ourselves, everything we lose is what we consider to be a fair and normal life. Going back to whatever we were experiencing as normal in March, the beginning of March 2020, though those days will never come back again, not in those ways. But we can create something different, but we won't get there without the awakening of people and the realization that we have it within us to make a change and form the way that we want our world to be. So it's time for us to pay attention to politics. And it's all well and good for people to say, well, I'm not really into politics, and I'm a spiritual person, or it's for that very reason that the wall has been able to be pulled over our eyes, because we don't pay close attention to what's been happening, that there's been so many games played in front of us, even down to the point of the visuals that are presented to us. We have to think where we get our information from. We get our information from devices and TV screens. And ask yourself if the same technology that creates our movies and our fiction cannot be then applied to our news reports and feeds. I'll leave that there for the time being without going into it too much more, but there is so much at stake from the people who want to protect those who want to protect and project a certain reality out to us, that they will stop at nothing in order to do this. Pay attention to politics, pay attention to current events, try our best to learn about history. And again, I know this is difficult because so much has been suppressed and erased and hidden. The real result of our reluctance to pay attention to this has left us vulnerable, and this is why we've been played. We need to look deep into the motives and the backgrounds of those who are being placed in front of us. And this has been a learning curve for me as well. We can't just be excited by a new face or a new candidate who is kind of the right race and the right gender. That's not a good enough reason. We need to really understand the background of who these people are and what they have done prior to them being placed in a position that we should believe and trust. Just ticking boxes isn't good enough. But to bring this up and to place this in a higher space is, what I find beautiful is that every day more people are popping out of this dream spell. And you have to ask yourself, are all these people crazy? Are we all going to just wake up and all be crazy? We have to be honest with ourselves. If we really think that something is not right, then we need to delve and research and find out what it is about what is being presented to us that doesn't sit right. So we need to find out what the real truth is. 2021 is the year of disclosure. So there's a lot more revelation to come. And what we will learn about will be the darkest aspects of this world, and it will shatter the reality of many people, the ideals of many people, and it will bring us down. It will break our hearts, but it will mean that we're able to face our individual and collective shadow, and then as we're healing, we're then be able to create a greater and more stable and stronger future for ourselves and for our children and those after our children. How do we heal? Well, if we recognise things for what they are, if we acknowledge that there is evil in this world, and that people don't want to think that things can go so far. It sounds like a movie, it sounds like a fiction, and it's been placed in fiction for us to believe that it couldn't be true. But fiction comes from aspects of reality, and as I said, things are presented to us in certain ways as factual, as fiction, but sometimes we have to subvert and see that the facts are the fiction and the fiction are the facts. So acknowledging that there's evil in this world, acknowledging that there are people that have beliefs that will place them, that even if we don't believe what they believe, it sounds too ridiculous to believe that that is a fact. There are people that have beliefs and they will do things as a result of those beliefs that will cause harm to others. And as I said, now's not the time for me to reveal that. These are things that you can look at to prepare yourself. 2021 will be the year of disclosure. And now is the time to face and overcome our fears. We have to take time for ourselves, build a practice of self-reflection, meditation, prayer, and forgiveness as well. Forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others, because this is a tool that is going to be the best one that we need. Is going to be love, and forgiveness is how we're going to get through this. Fear, we have to just notice the way that it limits us from our greatness. We can't make a clear decision in fear. We're just thinking about immediate survival and immediate escape, and there's more to the world than this. Let's imagine and pray for the beauty of humanity and the striving and the uprising of a beautiful new reality, because this can happen, but there's work to do. It's not just going to appear out of the clouds. Knowledge is what brings light, and if we can just examine what has been hidden and move ourselves forward, we can create that. So 2020 has given us 2020 vision. It's created a division, but it's that hard part. It's darkest before the dawn. It's always the bit where we're on our knees, we're going through rock bottom, but this is the moment that we can start to rise up and create something beautiful for our future. And I truly believe that. Thank you. So thank you for listening to that episode of Her Conversations. As you may have heard in the beginning, that I'm just doing a little bit of a rebrand on this. I'm nearing up to 100 episodes now, and I just want to change the way that Her Conversations will actually stand in the future. And also, just with everything that's going on in the world and everything that's coming forward in the future, I feel that I want to start to bring in some males and masculine voices and different aspects to just kind of, bring some fresh energy into the next 100 episodes. So thank you for listening. If you'd want to find out anything more about me, my website is carolmaewhittick.com. That's carolmaewhittick.com. And you can also follow me on Facebook under that name, on Twitter, and on Instagram. I'm Kazmick, Cazmick. I'm also on Parler, because we don't know what's going to happen with all of the platforms, but I'm just kind of there, not doing anything at the moment. But thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Until next week, take care. Bye.